Teen discovers she was switched at birth. Her choice shocks everyone. Hello, welcome, leave a like, subscribe, activate notifications, and enjoy this story. She had always believed she knew who she was. A typical teenager, navigating the complexities of life, never questioning the love and sacrifices of the people who raised her. But a simple school project, something as ordinary as a DNA test, was about to shatter everything she thought she knew. When the results came in, they didn't just reveal her ancestry. They revealed a devastating truth that would turn her world upside down. How could she have been living a lie her entire life? And what would she do now that the truth was staring her in the face? The tears of her parents, the silence that followed, and the sudden appearance of strangers who claimed to be her real family. This wasn't just a mistake. It was a nightmare from which there was no escape. As she stood at the crossroads of her life, torn between two families and two identities, one question lingered. Who was she really? And more importantly, who did she want to become? With everything she loved hanging in the balance, her next move would not only define her future but also the lives of everyone around her. The first rays of the morning sun filtered through the blinds, casting a warm glow over Anna's bedroom. She stretched lazily, her mind still half dreaming about the life that awaited her after graduation. It was her final week of high school, a milestone that marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Everything seemed perfect, almost too perfect. Anna was the kind of girl everyone liked. Smart, kind-hearted, and with a smile that could light up a room. She was the pride of her family and the envy of her classmates. Her parents, John and Lisa, had always been supportive, attending every school event, every recital, and every game. They were the picture-perfect American family, or so it seemed. The day began like any other, with the usual routine of breakfast, hurried conversations, and the rush to get to school. But as Anna sat in her biology class, the ordinary quickly turned extraordinary. The teacher, Mr. Harris, a man known for his love of science and quirky experiments, introduced a project that would change everything. A simple DNA test. Think of it as a fun little experiment, Mr. Harris said with a smile, handing out the kits. You'll get to learn a bit about your genetic makeup, maybe even discover something new about yourself. The class buzzed with excitement, laughing and joking about what their results might reveal. Some hoped to find traces of royal lineage, others a hidden talent passed down through generations. Anna didn't think much of it. To her, it was just another school project. She collected her sample, sealed it in the provided tube, and handed it back without a second thought. A few days later, the results came in. The students gathered around as Mr. Harris handed out the envelopes, one by one. The room was filled with the rustling of paper and gasps of surprise as students read their reports. Anna's turn came, and she tore open the envelope, her eyes scanning the numbers and percentages. Her smile faded as confusion took hold. The data didn't make sense. Maybe it's just a mistake, she whispered to herself, but the numbers stared back at her, cold and unyielding. Her blood type didn't match her parents'. The markers that should have aligned with her family's genetics were absent. Panic bubbled up inside her, but she forced herself to remain calm. After all, there had to be a logical explanation, right? The final bell rang, but Anna didn't move. She sat frozen, staring at the report, trying to process what it could mean. Finally, she gathered her things and walked home, each step heavy with dread. Her parents were in the kitchen when she arrived, their laughter and easy banter a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside her. Mom, Dad, can we talk? Anna's voice was shaky, almost a whisper. John and Lisa exchanged a glance, concern etching their faces. Of course, sweetheart, her father replied, his voice laced with warmth and reassurance. What's on your mind? Anna hesitated, her heart pounding. She handed them the report, watching their expressions change from curiosity to confusion, then to something darker, fear. Anna, where did you get this? Lisa's voice trembled as she clutched the paper, her knuckles white. It's from school. A DNA project, Anna replied, her voice barely audible. But it says I'm not. She couldn't finish the sentence. The words felt too heavy, too terrifying. For a moment, the room was silent, the kind of silence that suffocates. Anna's eyes flickered between her parents, searching for answers, for reassurance. But all she found was a deep, crushing sadness. John sighed heavily, his shoulders slumping as if the weight of the world had just been placed on them. He looked at Lisa, whose eyes were filled with tears, before turning back to Anna. "We were going to tell you, Anna, someday," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "But we didn't know how. We didn't know when." Anna felt the ground shift beneath her feet. The air in the room grew heavy, oppressive. "Tell me what?" she demanded, her voice rising in desperation. "What are you talking about?" Lisa took a deep breath, wiping away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. "Anna, you're not. You weren't born to us. You were switched at birth." The world stopped. Anna's mind went blank. Her heart thundered in her chest, and she struggled to breathe. No, that's not possible," she stammered, shaking her head as if that would somehow undo the words she had just heard. "You're lying. This can't be real." But the looks on their faces said it all. There was no denying it. Everything she thought she knew about herself, about her life, shattered in an instant. Anna's eyes welled up with tears, blurring the sight of her parents. She felt like a stranger in her own home, in her own skin. "Who am I?" she whispered, the question hanging in the air, filled with a pain so deep it cut through the silence like a knife. "Who am I, really?" The question echoed through the room, unanswered, as Anna's world crumbled around her. Everything she had ever believed, every memory, every bond, was now clouded in uncertainty. And in that moment, as the tears streamed down her face, Anna knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The days following the devastating revelation were a blur for Anna. Sleep eluded her, and when it finally came, it was filled with nightmares that left her drenched in sweat and gasping for air. The life she had known, the life she had trusted, had been ripped away, leaving a gaping void in its place. The questions that plagued her mind were relentless. If she wasn't who she thought she was, then who was she? Who were her real parents? And why had this truth been hidden from her for so long? The tension in the house was palpable. John and Lisa tried to console her, but their words felt hollow, their reassurances empty. The bond they once shared now seemed fragile, like a thread stretched too thin, ready to snap at any moment. Anna found herself withdrawing, retreating into a shell of confusion and pain. She needed answers, real answers, not the vague platitudes her parents offered. She needed to know the truth. One evening, after a particularly strained dinner, Anna couldn't take it anymore. She set her fork down and looked across the table at her parents, her eyes hard with determination. "I need to know everything," she said, her voice steady but cold. "No more secrets. Tell me the whole truth." John and Lisa exchanged a worried glance, but there was no denying the resolve in their daughter's voice. With a resigned sigh, John nodded. "You deserve to know," he said quietly, his voice tinged with guilt. They moved to the living room, where the air was thick with tension. Lisa clutched a tissue in her hand, her eyes red from crying. John sat beside her, his face drawn with the weight of what he was about to say. "We found out a few years after you were born," John began, his voice trembling slightly. "There was a mix-up at the hospital. You were placed in our care by mistake." Anna's heart pounded in her chest. "A mix-up?" she repeated, disbelief lacing her words. "And you never thought to tell me?" Lisa sobbed softly, wiping away tears that wouldn't stop. "We didn't know how," she whispered. "We were afraid. Afraid you would hate us, that you wouldn't see us as your real parents anymore." "But you knew," Anna shot back, her voice rising. "You knew I wasn't really your daughter, and you just pretended everything was fine? For 18 years. John's eyes filled with tears as he shook his head. "You are our daughter, Anna. You've always been our daughter. We love you more than anything, and we thought it would be better this way." "Better for who?" Anna demanded, her voice cracking under the strain. For you? To live a lie? To keep me in the dark about who I really am? We were selfish, Lisa admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. But we were scared, Anna. Scared of losing you. The room fell silent, the weight of their confession hanging heavy in the air. Anna felt a mixture of anger, betrayal, and heartbreak swirling inside her. But beneath it all, there was a gnawing sense of loss. Loss of the identity she had always known, loss of trust, loss of certainty. She had no idea what to do next, but she knew she couldn't stay in this limbo. Who are they? Anna asked after a long pause, her voice quiet and haunted. My real parents. Who are they? John hesitated, then reached for a folder that had been tucked away in a drawer for years. He handed it to Anna with trembling hands. This has everything we know, he said softly. Their names, where they live. It's all in there. Anna took the folder, her hands shaking as she opened it. Inside were documents, photographs, and a letter. Pieces of a life she had never known existed. She stared at the pictures, her breath catching in her throat. The faces looking back at her were familiar in a strange, unsettling way. There was no denying the resemblance. Her biological parents, the folder revealed, were part of a wealthy and influential family. One of those families whose names carried weight, whose lives were marked by privilege and power. But as Anna scanned the details, she noticed something else, something that sent a chill down her spine. The other girl, the one who had taken her place, had not been so lucky. She had grown up in poverty, in a broken home that had offered little in the way of love or support. The contrast between their lives was stark, and it filled Anna with a deep sense of guilt and confusion. That night, Anna lay in bed, clutching the folder to her chest, her mind racing. She had always imagined that finding her biological family would bring some kind of closure. But now, all it had done was open a new wound. The people in those photographs were strangers, and yet they were her flesh and blood. And the girl who had lived the life she should have had. What had happened to her? What kind of person had she become? The next morning, Anna made a decision. She couldn't live with the uncertainty any longer. She needed to meet them, to confront the people who had unknowingly been a part of her life from the very beginning. She needed to find out who she really was, even if it meant tearing apart everything she had ever known. She approached her parents with a newfound resolve. I'm going to find them, she said firmly. I'm going to meet my real family. John and Lisa looked at each other, their faces filled with a mix of fear and sadness. Anna, please, Lisa began, but Anna shook her head. I have to do this, she said, her voice unwavering. I need to know the truth. And with that, Anna set out on a journey that would take her far from the comfort of the life she had always known. She was determined to uncover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Little did she know, the answers she sought would lead her down a path fraught with danger, deception, and heartache. A path that would force her to confront not only her past but also the darkest corners of her soul. The drive to the other side of town was quiet, the kind of silence that felt thick and suffocating. Anna's thoughts swirled in a chaotic storm as she gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white. The address she had typed into her GPS led her to a neighborhood vastly different from the one she had grown up in. Instead of the cozy, familiar streets she knew, these were lined with towering mansions, immaculate lawns, and high gates that hinted at the world of wealth and privilege within. As she approached the iron gate of the address listed in the folder, her heart pounded with a mix of dread and anticipation. The gate opened silently as she pressed the intercom, her voice shaky as she introduced herself. A security guard waved her in, and she drove up the long, winding driveway, her stomach twisting into knots. This was it, the moment she had been both dreading and yearning for. She was about to meet the people who had given her life but had never been part of it. The house. No, the mansion loomed ahead, a sprawling estate that seemed to belong more in a magazine than in reality. Anna parked her car, her hands trembling as she stepped out. She felt out of place, like an imposter in a world she didn't belong to. The front door opened, and a woman stepped out. She was elegant, with a cold, polished demeanor that matched her surroundings. This was Margaret, Anna's biological mother. Anna, I presume? Margaret's voice was smooth, almost rehearsed. There was no warmth in her eyes, only a cool detachment that sent a shiver down Anna's spine. Yes, Anna replied, her voice barely a whisper. Margaret studied her for a moment, then gestured for Anna to come inside. The interior of the mansion was just as grand as the exterior. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, walls adorned with expensive art. But despite the luxury, the house felt cold, empty. It was a stark contrast to the warmth and clutter of the home she had grown up in. They sat in a parlor that overlooked a perfectly manicured garden. Margaret offered Anna tea, but she declined, too nervous to eat or drink anything. The conversation was stilted, formal, with Margaret asking polite questions about Anna's life, her education, her interests. But it was clear that the woman before her was more interested in appearances than in forging any real connection. As they talked, Anna's gaze wandered to the photographs on the walls, family portraits that told a story of wealth and success. But one picture caught her eye, a girl around her age with the same dark hair and sharp features. This was her sister, the girl who had lived the life that was supposed to be hers. She's out right now, Margaret said, noticing Anna's gaze. She'll be home later. I'm sure she'll be curious to meet you. Curious. The word felt wrong, clinical. Anna had imagined this moment countless times, but it was nothing like she had expected. There was no tearful reunion, no rush of emotion. Instead, she felt an overwhelming sense of emptiness, as if the reality of meeting her biological family had drained her of whatever hope she had clung to. The afternoon dragged on, with Margaret speaking in vague terms about the family's history, their status in society, and their expectations. It became clear that the Gifford family was one bound by tradition, reputation, and an unspoken code that valued power above all else. Anna felt more and more like a visitor, a stranger in this world of privilege. Finally, the front door opened, and Anna's sister walked in. Emily was beautiful, with an air of confidence that came from a life of luxury. She looked at Anna with a mixture of curiosity and disdain, as if trying to assess what kind of threat this newcomer posed to her world. "So, you're the one who got switched," Emily said bluntly, her tone cutting. Anna flinched at the harshness in her voice. "I guess so," she replied, unsure of what else to say. Emily shrugged, as if the situation was merely an inconvenience, something to be tolerated rather than embraced. Well, this should be interesting. The tension between them was immediate, palpable. Anna could feel the hostility simmering beneath Emily's polite facade. It was clear that Emily saw her as an outsider, someone who didn't belong. And for the first time, Anna began to wonder if maybe she didn't want to belong in this world after all. As the day wore on, Anna grew more and more uncomfortable. The Giffords were polite, but there was an undercurrent of coldness, of indifference that made her skin crawl. She could feel their judgment in every glance, every word, as if they were evaluating her, deciding whether she was worth their time. When she finally left, Anna felt a wave of relief wash over her. The oppressive atmosphere of the mansion was suffocating, and she couldn't get out fast enough. As she drove away, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had made a terrible mistake by coming here. But the worst part was yet to come. When Anna returned home, the tension between her and her parents was unbearable. John and Lisa tried to act normal, but the strain of the situation hung heavy in the air. Anna felt torn, as if she was being pulled in two different directions, and no matter which way she turned, someone would get hurt. Her thoughts drifted back to Emily, to the life she had led, and to the harsh reality that now lay before her. How could she choose between the family that had raised her with love and the family that was her by blood? How could she reconcile the two halves of her identity when they seemed so incompatible? As Anna lay in bed that night, staring up at the ceiling, she felt a deep sense of despair. No matter what choice she made, she would lose something, someone. The weight of that realization pressed down on her, making it hard to breathe. But as she closed her eyes, one thought haunted her more than any other. What if she could never find a place where she truly belonged? The following weeks were a blur of conflicting emotions for Anna. Every day felt like a battle between two worlds, one filled with the warmth and love of her adoptive parents, and the other, a cold, distant universe governed by status and wealth. She found herself living a double life, spending time with both families, trying to figure out where she truly belonged. But the more she learned, the more complicated everything became. Anna's time with the Giffords was a whirlwind of dinners, charity events, and introductions to influential people. On the surface, it all seemed glamorous, but beneath the veneer of elegance, there was a constant undercurrent of tension. Margaret kept a close watch on her, scrutinizing her every move, as if trying to mold Anna into the perfect daughter she had never had. Emily, on the other hand, grew more hostile by the day, her jealousy barely concealed behind a forced smile. One evening, after yet another suffocating dinner with the Giffords, Anna found herself alone in the study. The room was dark, lit only by the soft glow of a single lamp. She wandered over to a large, ornate bookshelf, her fingers tracing the spines of old leather-bound books. As she reached the end of the shelf, her hand brushed against something unusual, a small, hidden latch. Curiosity piqued. Anna pulled the latch, and a section of the bookshelf swung open, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a dusty box, its contents clearly untouched for years. She hesitated for a moment, then carefully lifted the lid. What she found inside made her heart stop. There, among old letters and documents, was a birth certificate, her birth certificate. But it wasn't the one she had seen before. This one had a different date, different details, as if it had been deliberately altered. Beneath it was a series of photographs, each one more disturbing than the last. They depicted a younger Margaret, standing beside a man who wasn't her husband. The man looked familiar, too familiar. Anna's breath caught in her throat as she pieced it together. This man, the one in the photographs, was Emily's biological father, but not her own. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. The switch at the hospital hadn't been an accident. It had been a calculated move, a cover-up for a scandal that could have destroyed the Gifford family's reputation. Her mind raced as she tried to make sense of it all. Margaret had orchestrated the entire thing, swapping babies to hide the fact that Emily wasn't her husband's child. Anna had been nothing more than a pawn in a twisted game of deception, sacrificed to maintain the Giffords' pristine image. As the truth sank in, Anna felt a surge of anger and betrayal. She had come here seeking answers, hoping to find some sense of belonging. But instead, she had uncovered a web of lies that stretched back nearly 2 decades. The Giffords had taken her from the life she was meant to live, all to protect their precious facade. Just as she was about to put everything back, she heard footsteps approaching. Panic gripped her as she quickly closed the box and shoved it back into the hidden compartment. The bookshelf clicked shut just as Margaret entered the room, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. "What are you doing in here?" Margaret asked, her voice icy. "Nothing," Anna replied, struggling to keep her voice steady. "I was just looking around." Margaret's gaze lingered on her for a moment. Then she smiled. A cold, calculated smile that sent chills down Anna's spine. "You should be careful where you wander," she said softly. "There are some things better left undiscovered." Anna forced a smile in return, but inside, she was seething. She knew now that Margaret was dangerous, willing to do whatever it took to protect her secrets. And if Anna wasn't careful, she could easily become another casualty in the Giffords' ruthless pursuit of power. That night, as she lay in bed, Anna's mind raced with conflicting thoughts. The discovery had shattered any illusions she had about her biological family. They weren't just cold, they were manipulative, willing to destroy lives to protect their own. And now that she knew the truth, she realized she was in more danger than ever before. But she couldn't let them get away with it. Not after everything they had done to her, to Emily, and to her adoptive parents, who had been caught in the crossfire of a scheme they knew nothing about. Anna resolved to confront Margaret, to demand answers, and to expose the truth for what it was. Yet, as she stared up at the ceiling, a sinking feeling settled in her gut. The confrontation wouldn't be easy. The Giffords had power, influence, and connections that stretched far beyond what Anna could comprehend. Going up against them meant risking everything: her safety, her future, and the lives of those she loved. But she couldn't walk away. Not now. Not after uncovering the truth. The decision weighed heavily on her, but there was no turning back. Anna knew that whatever happened next, it would change everything. As she drifted into a restless sleep, one thought haunted her dreams. How far would the Giffords go to keep their secrets buried? And would Anna be able to survive the storm that was about to break? The truth hung over Anna like a dark cloud, casting a shadow over every interaction she had with both her adoptive and biological families. The revelation that her entire life had been a lie orchestrated to protect a powerful family's reputation was too much to bear. But what haunted her most was the realization that she had no idea who she could trust. The weight of her discovery felt crushing, suffocating her every waking moment. Anna had always believed that family was the one thing that could be trusted, the one constant in a world full of uncertainties. Now, that belief had been shattered. She couldn't look at John and Lisa the same way, knowing they had kept the truth from her for so long. And the Giffords, her blood family, felt like strangers, distant and calculating. The warmth she had once associated with the idea of family was gone, replaced by a cold, empty void. Back at home, things were falling apart. The tension between Anna and her adoptive parents had become unbearable. John and Lisa tried to reach out, but their attempts only deepened the rift. They were desperate to hold onto the daughter they had raised, but Anna couldn't help feeling betrayed by their silence. Every conversation felt like a minefield, each word laced with unspoken accusations and hidden guilt. "I don't know who I am anymore," Anna confessed one evening as she sat across from them at the dinner table, her voice barely above a whisper. The food on her plate remained untouched, her appetite long gone. "How could you keep this from me?" John's eyes were filled with regret, but also determination. "We were trying to protect you, Anna. We thought it was for the best. But you were protecting yourselves too, weren't you?" Anna shot back, her voice trembling with the weight of her emotions. "You didn't want to lose me, so you chose to live a lie." Lisa's tears fell silently, her face a mask of pain. "We love you, Anna. We didn't know how to tell you. We were scared." "So was I," Anna whispered, her voice cracking. "I was scared too. But now I'm just lost." In the days that followed, Anna found herself withdrawing more and more, isolating herself from the people who had once been her anchors. She wandered through the halls of her high school, feeling like a ghost, disconnected from the life she had once known. Friends noticed the change, but no one knew what to say. How could they, when Anna herself didn't have the words to describe the storm raging inside her? The pressure to make a choice between her two families was unbearable. Margaret and the Giffords began to subtly push Anna to embrace their world, offering her luxuries and opportunities she had never dreamed of. They invited her to events, introduced her to influential people, and showered her with gifts. But beneath their polished smiles and kind words, Anna sensed the manipulation, the unspoken demand for loyalty. One evening, after another strained dinner with the Giffords, Anna retreated to her room in their mansion. She sat by the window, staring out at the sprawling gardens, feeling more alone than ever. The grandeur of her surroundings only highlighted the emptiness inside her. The Giffords' world was one of power, wealth, and control, but it lacked the one thing Anna craved most: genuine love and warmth. As she gazed at the moonlit garden, her thoughts drifted back to the other girl, Emily, who had unknowingly lived the life that was supposed to be hers. Emily had everything Anna didn't: status, luxury, and the Giffords' cold affection. But Anna couldn't shake the feeling that Emily was as much a victim of this twisted scheme as she was. The jealousy and resentment between them were palpable, but underneath it all, Anna sensed a shared pain, a connection forged by the cruel hand of fate. The following day, Anna made a decision. She couldn't continue living in this state of limbo, torn between two worlds that felt equally foreign. She needed to confront Margaret, to demand the truth, no matter how painful it might be. If she was ever going to find peace, she needed to understand why this had happened and what it meant for her future. She waited until the house was quiet, the rest of the family occupied with their own concerns. Then, with her heart pounding in her chest, she made her way to Margaret's study. The door was ajar, and inside, Margaret was seated at her desk, reviewing papers with a stern expression. The sight of her biological mother, so composed and calculating, filled Anna with a mixture of fear and determination. "Margaret," Anna began, stepping into the room. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled. "We need to talk." Margaret looked up, her expression unreadable. "Of course, dear. What's on your mind?" Anna took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "I found something in your study about the switch. I know it wasn't an accident." For a moment, Margaret's facade cracked. Her eyes narrowed, and her grip on the papers tightened. But she quickly regained her composure, her voice cold and measured. "You shouldn't have been snooping around, Anna. Some things are better left in the past." "But I can't leave it in the past." Anna's voice rose with frustration. "This is my life we're talking about. I deserve to know the truth." Margaret sighed, setting the papers aside. She leaned back in her chair, studying Anna with a calculating gaze. "Very well. I suppose you're old enough to understand the realities of the world. The truth is, the switch was deliberate. It was necessary to protect our family's reputation. Your father, he wasn't perfect. There were indiscretions, things that needed to be covered up. Emily's parentage had to be hidden, and you were a convenient solution." Anna's heart sank as the full weight of Margaret's words hit her. She had always feared the truth would be ugly, but hearing it laid out so bluntly was devastating. "So I was just a tool? A way to keep your secrets safe?" Margaret didn't flinch. "You were more than that. You were an opportunity for us to give you a life we thought would be better than the one you would have had otherwise. But yes, it was also about maintaining the status quo. In our world, appearances are everything." Tears welled up in Anna's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "You don't care about me, do you? I'm just another piece in your game." Margaret's expression softened slightly, but her tone remained firm. "You're part of this family, Anna, whether you like it or not. That comes with certain responsibilities." Anna shook her head, the tears now spilling down her cheeks. "I don't want any part of this. I don't want to be part of a family that values power over love, that sees people as tools to be used and discarded." Margaret's gaze hardened. "Be careful, Anna. You're treading on dangerous ground. Remember, you're not just rejecting us, you're rejecting everything that comes with being a Gifford." Anna took a step back, her resolve strengthening. "I'd rather be true to myself than live a lie, no matter what the cost." With that, she turned and left the study, her heart heavy but her mind clear. The confrontation had confirmed what she had feared all along. Margaret and the Giffords would never see her as more than a pawn in their game. But now Anna knew what she had to do. She would walk away from the wealth, the status, and the lies. She would forge her own path, even if it meant facing the unknown alone. As Anna stepped out into the cool night air, she felt a strange sense of peace. For the first time in weeks, she knew where she stood. She wasn't defined by her bloodline or the expectations of others. She was Anna, and she would decide her own fate. But as she left the Gifford estate behind, Anna couldn't help but wonder, what would the cost of her decision be? And could she truly escape the shadow of the past that still clung to her so tightly? Anna's decision to confront Margaret and walk away from the Gifford family had brought her a fleeting sense of clarity. But as the days passed, the weight of that decision began to bear down on her. The choice she had made was supposed to bring her peace, but instead, it left her feeling more isolated and lost than ever before. Returning to her adoptive parents, Anna found that the home she had once cherished now felt foreign. John and Lisa tried to act as if everything was normal, but the truth of her origin had created an unbridgeable chasm between them. Anna could see the pain in their eyes, the silent fear that they were losing her. They tried to make her feel welcome, to remind her that she was still their daughter, but the doubts gnawed at her relentlessly. One evening, after a particularly tense dinner, Anna retreated to her room and lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling. Her mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions: love for the parents who had raised her, anger at the lies they had kept, guilt for the pain she was causing them, and confusion about her own identity. How could she reconcile these two parts of her life? How could she make sense of a world that had turned upside down? The faces of Margaret and Emily haunted her thoughts. The cold detachment of her biological mother, the resentment of her sister. They were strangers to her, yet they were her blood. The Giffords had offered her a life of luxury, of power, but at what cost? Could she ever truly belong to a family that valued appearances over love, that saw people as pawns in a game of status and control? The doubts began to creep in, whispering insidiously in the back of her mind. Had she made the right choice by rejecting the Giffords? Was she being selfish, turning her back on a life that could offer her so much? The allure of wealth and influence was tempting, and despite everything, a part of her wondered if she had been too hasty in walking away. But then there was Emily, who had been raised in Anna's place, who had lived the life Anna should have had. Anna couldn't ignore the gnawing guilt that came with the realization that her own comfort had come at someone else's expense. Emily had grown up in a world of privilege, yes, but also in a world devoid of warmth and genuine love. Was it fair to hold that against her? Was it fair to hold any of this against Emily, who had no more control over her circumstances than Anna did? As the night wore on, Anna's thoughts spiraled further into doubt. She felt trapped between two worlds, unable to fully commit to either. The family that had raised her, that had given her everything, now seemed like a lie. But the family that was her blood was colder, more distant than she could have ever imagined. Where did she truly belong? Who was she, really? Sleep eluded her that night, and when the dawn broke, Anna was no closer to finding answers. The burden of her decision weighed heavily on her, and the guilt she felt for causing pain to both her families was unbearable. She needed to clear her head, to escape the suffocating confines of her life, if only for a little while. Anna grabbed her jacket and headed out, driving aimlessly through the early morning fog. The quiet streets and dim light reflected her inner turmoil. Eventually, she found herself at the edge of town, near a park she hadn't visited in years. The place held memories of her childhood, of simpler times when life had been less complicated. She parked the car and walked to a bench near the lake, where she sat, watching the ripples on the water. As she sat there, lost in thought, Anna's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. It was a message from Emily. Surprised, she hesitated before opening it. The message was short, almost curt. "We need to talk. It's about our father." Anna's heart skipped a beat. The words were simple, but the implications were heavy. What could Emily possibly want to discuss? And why now, after everything that had happened? Despite her reservations, Anna felt a pull, a need to know more. Perhaps this was the moment she had been waiting for, the chance to bridge the gap between her two lives, or maybe even to find some semblance of closure. But as she stared at the message, doubt gripped her once again. Did she really want to reopen that door, to dive back into the mess she had tried so hard to escape? Or was it time to finally let go, to walk away from the past and focus on the life she had built with the parents who had raised her? Anna felt the weight of the choice before her. She was standing at a crossroads, with no clear path ahead. Whatever decision she made would change everything, but for the first time, she wasn't sure if there was a right choice at all. The sun began to rise, casting a soft light over the lake. Anna watched the sky slowly turn from gray to pink, her thoughts as turbulent as the water beneath her. She knew she couldn't stay in this limbo forever. Eventually, she would have to make a choice, even if it meant walking a path she didn't fully understand. But for now, she just sat there, letting the moment linger, caught between doubt and decision, between the past and the future. And as the sun climbed higher, Anna felt the cold realization that no matter what she chose, there would be no going back. The message from Emily lingered in Anna's mind like a persistent echo. She had spent days agonizing over what to do, torn between the desire to move on and the need to understand the truth about her past. Ultimately, her curiosity won out. The pull of knowing more about her biological family, and perhaps finding some clarity, was too strong to resist. Anna decided to meet Emily, hoping that whatever secrets her sister had to reveal might bring her some peace. They agreed to meet at a small cafe on the outskirts of town, far from the prying eyes of the Gifford family. The cafe was quiet, the kind of place where people came to be alone with their thoughts. Anna arrived early, her heart pounding with anticipation and anxiety. She ordered a coffee and sat by the window, her mind racing with possibilities. When Emily finally walked in, Anna noticed the difference immediately. The haughty demeanor that usually defined her was gone, replaced by a look of exhaustion and worry. Emily's eyes were shadowed with sleeplessness, her face pale. She sat down across from Anna without a word, her fingers trembling slightly as she clutched her cup. "What's going on, Emily?" Anna asked, her voice a mixture of concern and caution. Emily took a deep breath, struggling to find the right words. "It's about our father, the man who raised me. He's not well." Anna's heart tightened. She had never met this man, but the gravity of Emily's tone made her realize how much this meant to her. "What do you mean?" "He's dying, Anna," Emily said bluntly, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's been sick for a while, but it's getting worse. The doctors don't think he has much time left." Anna felt a pang of sympathy for Emily, but it was mixed with confusion. "Why are you telling me this?" Emily hesitated, her gaze dropping to the table. "Because there's something else. Something you need to know." Anna leaned in, her pulse quickening. "What is it?" "There's a reason you were switched, Anna," Emily said, her voice filled with anguish. "It wasn't just about protecting the family's reputation. It was about saving a life, my life." Anna's breath caught in her throat. "What are you talking about?" Emily's eyes filled with tears as she spoke. "I was born with a rare genetic condition. My body doesn't produce enough healthy blood cells, and I need regular transfusions. Our father, my biological father, knew that finding a compatible donor would be difficult. When he found out about the mix-up at the hospital, he saw an opportunity. He had you switched with me because he believed you would be a perfect match." Anna felt the room spin around her as the revelation sank in. "So, I was brought into your family not just to cover up a scandal, but to be your donor." Emily nodded, her tears now flowing freely. "Yes, that's why our father orchestrated the switch. He was desperate to save me, and you were his best chance. But when you were raised by another family, he kept quiet, hoping you'd never find out." The weight of Emily's words crushed Anna's chest. All her life, she had been searching for her identity, trying to reconcile who she was with the life she had lived. Now, she realized that her very existence in the Gifford family had been reduced to a means to an end, a tool for survival. "And now?" Anna asked, her voice hollow. "What do you expect from me now?" Emily's sobs grew more intense. "I'm getting worse, Anna. The transfusions aren't enough anymore. The doctors say I need a bone marrow transplant, and you're the only match. If you don't help me, I won't survive." The cafe fell into a heavy silence as Anna processed the enormity of what Emily was asking. Her mind raced with conflicting emotions: anger at the deception, guilt for the life Emily had endured, and a deep, overwhelming sadness. How could she possibly make this decision? If she helped Emily, she would be tied to the Gifford family forever, forced to confront the dark legacy that had shaped both their lives. But if she refused, she would be condemning her sister to death. The choice was impossible, and yet it was one she couldn't avoid. As Anna looked at Emily's tear-streaked face, she saw not the privileged girl she had once envied, but a broken soul desperately clinging to life. The resentment and bitterness that had clouded their relationship began to melt away, replaced by a painful understanding of the bonds that tied them together. Anna knew that whatever she decided, there would be no turning back. The stakes were too high, the consequences too dire. This was the ultimate test of her character, her morality, and her sense of self. And as she sat there, grappling with the weight of the decision before her, Anna realized that the answer she sought wouldn't come from logic or reason, but from the depths of her heart. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Anna spoke, her voice trembling with emotion. "I'll do it, Emily. I'll help you." Emily's eyes widened in disbelief, her expression a mix of relief and gratitude. "Thank you, Anna. Thank you." But even as she made the promise, Anna knew that the cost would be more than just physical. It would mean confronting the painful truths of her past, reconciling with the lies that had shaped her life, and ultimately, redefining who she was and what family truly meant. As the two sisters sat together in the dim light of the cafe, the gravity of the situation hung heavy between them. The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with challenges and heartache. But for the first time, Anna felt a sense of purpose, a reason to face the darkness and find her own way forward. The days leading up to the bone marrow transplant felt surreal for Anna. The decision to help Emily had brought a strange sense of calm, as if the storm of doubt and confusion that had plagued her for so long had finally settled. But that calm was fragile, threatened by the enormity of what lay ahead. Anna knew that after the procedure, nothing would ever be the same. The Giffords arranged everything with their usual efficiency. Margaret, still as cold and calculating as ever, made sure the best doctors were involved, the most advanced treatments available. But despite the clinical precision of it all, Anna couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking into a trap, one from which she might never escape. On the morning of the procedure, Anna arrived at the hospital with John and Lisa by her side. Their presence was a comfort, a reminder of the life she had known before everything had changed. As she was prepped for surgery, John squeezed her hand, his eyes filled with unspoken love and pride. "You're doing the right thing, Anna," he said softly. "No matter what happens, we're proud of you." Lisa, her face etched with worry, nodded in agreement. "You've always been our daughter, Anna. That will never change." Anna felt a lump in her throat as she looked at the people who had raised her, who had given her everything. In that moment, she realized that her decision to help Emily wasn't just about saving her sister's life. It was about honoring the values John and Lisa had instilled in her, the belief in doing what was right, even when it was hard, even when it hurt. As she was wheeled into the operating room, Anna's thoughts turned to Emily. Her sister was somewhere in the same hospital, waiting for the life-saving cells that Anna's body would provide. The animosity that had once existed between them had faded, replaced by a fragile bond forged in the fires of their shared pain. For better or worse, they were connected not just by blood, but by the choices they had made. The procedure itself was a blur, a haze of bright lights and sterile white walls. Anna drifted in and out of consciousness, the anesthesia pulling her into a deep, dreamless sleep. When she finally awoke, the first thing she felt was the dull ache in her bones, a reminder of the sacrifice she had made. The room was quiet, save for the soft beeping of the heart monitor beside her bed. As the fog of sleep lifted, Anna's mind began to clear. She had done it. She had gone through with the transplant, had given Emily the chance to live. But now that it was over, the reality of her situation came crashing down on her. She was tied to the Gifford family forever, bound by the act of saving her sister's life. And with that bond came a responsibility she hadn't fully anticipated. A soft knock at the door broke her reverie. Anna turned her head to see Margaret standing in the doorway, her face unreadable. There was no warmth in her eyes, no gratitude, just a cold, calculating stare that sent a shiver down Anna's spine. "You did well," Margaret said, her voice devoid of emotion. "Emily is stable. The doctors say she'll make a full recovery." Anna nodded weakly, too tired to respond. She had expected this, expected Margaret to treat the situation like a business transaction, a deal that had been successfully executed. But it still hurt to see how little her sacrifice meant to the woman who had given her life. "I know you've been through a lot," Margaret continued, her tone clipped. "But now that this is over, it's time to discuss what comes next." Anna's heart sank. She knew what was coming, but she wasn't ready to face it. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Margaret's gaze hardened. "You're a Gifford, Anna. You've proven that by helping Emily. But being part of this family comes with responsibilities. There are expectations, obligations. Now that you've accepted your place, it's time to start living up to them." Anna felt a surge of anger and disbelief. After everything she had done, after giving so much of herself, Margaret still saw her as nothing more than a pawn, a tool to be used. "I didn't do this to become part of your world," Anna said, her voice trembling with emotion. "I did this because it was the right thing to do, but I won't let you control my life." Margaret's eyes narrowed, but she didn't argue. Instead, she simply nodded, as if Anna's defiance was an inconvenience rather than a challenge. "We'll see about that," she said coolly. "For now, rest. We'll talk more when you're stronger." With that, Margaret turned and left the room, leaving Anna alone with her thoughts. The encounter had shaken her, but it had also solidified her resolve. She wouldn't let the Giffords dictate her life. She had made her choice, and now she would live with it on her own terms. In the days that followed, Anna's recovery was slow but steady. Emily's health improved dramatically, and the doctors were optimistic about her future. Anna visited her sister once, a brief and awkward encounter filled with unspoken gratitude and guilt. They didn't talk much, but the silence between them spoke volumes. They were bound by blood, by sacrifice, but the scars of their past would take time to heal. When Anna was finally discharged from the hospital, John and Lisa were there to take her home. As she stepped out into the crisp autumn air, she felt a sense of liberation, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in weeks, Anna felt like she was in control of her own destiny. She knew that the Giffords wouldn't give up easily, that Margaret would continue to exert her influence, but Anna was determined to carve out her own path. She wasn't just a Gifford, or a daughter, or a sister. She was herself, Anna, and she would decide what that meant. As the car pulled away from the hospital, Anna glanced back one last time, her thoughts turning to Emily, to Margaret, and to the life she was leaving behind. The decision she had made was difficult, painful, but it was hers. And with that decision came a newfound strength, a sense of identity that no one could take away. The future was uncertain, but Anna was ready to face it, no matter what challenges lay ahead. She had found her own way, and now she was ready to live it. Thank you very much for listening to this story. Comment below what you thought of the ending and from which city you're listening to us. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more, click on the next story that's appearing on your screen now. Leave your like and subscribe to our channel so we can build a huge community that shares inspiring stories together. See you soon.